The Emerald Triangle in Northern California is known to be the largest marijuana-producing region in the country. The 3 points of the triangle are Humboldt County on the coast, Trinity County further inland, and Mendocino County to the south. This area is an ideal microclimate for growing, and the thick tree cover and rural terrain make it difficult to surveil and access. A sinister history stretching back more than half a century has shaped the Emerald Triangle into one of the most dangerous counties in the country. It boasts the second highest homicide rate in the state, despite its small population. And with a missing persons rate doubling the state's average, convenience stores, gas stations, and dollar shops are plastered with the posters of those who have vanished. The area is haunted by those who can no longer be found. These cases remain open for months and years, the facts fading like the photographs in their missing posters. Over 30 such cases have been confirmed in Humboldt County, but 5 remain the face of those who have disappeared. They are referred to as the Humboldt Five. These women, with similarities in appearances, historical hardships, and areas of disappearance. Their absence indicates something ominous. Is it a community with a streak of criminality that has turned on the vulnerable with ferocious indifference? Or an individual who has used the rural expanse of Humboldt County as hunting grounds for the last several decades? In the late 1960s, there was a back to the land movement. A subculture in California had formed, one that had been fueled by rebellion and psychedelic drugs. They were focused on questioning the status quo, and they fled in increasing numbers from popular urban centers like San Francisco and Los Angeles. They headed north in search of cheap parcels of arable land, where they could become self-sustaining farmers. The climate of the Emerald Triangle was ideal for marijuana growth. The area had fertile, loamy soil and annual clement weather. There was a perfect balance of rain and sun, ample tree cover to disguise crops, and remote locations that were accessible from only a few back roads. As grow operations continued and marijuana became a cash crop, the community was fractured by the war on drugs. Multi-agency task forces like CAMP raided farms, destroyed entire generations of wealth, and delivered decades-long prison sentences. This led to the dissolution of the community. Growers were hesitant to trust one another and even more hesitant about trusting outsiders. However, as operations grew, so did the demand for labor. This was the perfect opportunity for a transient workforce composed of drug enthusiasts, seasonal farmhands, and trimmigrants. With a diminished community, pressure from law enforcement, and transient elements, crime slipped into the community. Operations were being attacked by rival growers or seized by former workers. This cycle compounded for decades, and now, the Emerald Triangle is a hotbed for violent crimes and disappearances. For example, Michael Bear Carson and his wife Susan were field hands who worked on a cannabis farm in the early 1980s in Alder Point, more infamously known as Murder Mountain. They murdered another hand on the farm who had been reported missing. They fled the area and claimed several more victims before being arrested. Wayne Adam Ford was another serial killer who willingly surrendered, arriving at the Humboldt County Sheriff's Station with a woman's severed breast inside of a Ziploc bag. He claimed 4 other victims through 1997 and 1998, and he's suspected as having been responsible for much more. It's in this area that the Humboldt Five vanished without a trace. Jennifer Wilmer was 21 when she moved to Arcata in late 1992, dropping out of St. John's University on a full-ride scholarship. She tried to register at College of the Redwoods, but she couldn't join classes already in progress. She worked as a waitress briefly before falling into unemployment. She turned to welfare for income, trying to make ends meet. She hung out in Arcata Plaza, brushing shoulders with the other drifters, marijuana crop hands, and anachronistic hippies. Her mother purchased airfare for Wilmer to return home to New York, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. She moved in with her boyfriend and some friends in Trinity County. On advice from her friend, she hitched to a nearby farm to make introductions in search of work. She left behind her identification, clothing, address book, bank card, and sleeping bag. Wilmer's friends later visited the farm in search of her, but she had never arrived. She disappeared on September 13th, 1993. A private investigator later discovered that a local known as Cowboy Fred had been obsessed with Jennifer, following her around Arcata Plaza. She had communicated that she was deeply afraid of him. Perhaps Cowboy Fred was waiting for her as she left the house that day. Wilmer could have accidentally stumbled into a growing operation where armed workers may have felt threatened or surprised. She could have triggered a proximity trap that commonly surrounds these growing operations. Lastly, Wilmer likely planned to hitchhike to the nearby farm. It's suspected that she may have been abducted while attempting to hitchhike to her location. It's unknown what happened to Jennifer Wilmer. If you have any additional information, please contact the Trinity County Sheriff's Department. Karen Mitchell was a junior in high school. She had moved to Eureka to live with her aunt. She left her home in Southern California to escape violent crime and escalating conflicts with her mother. They maintained a close relationship after her move, and in late November they talked on the phone about taking college courses together at Humboldt State University. During Thanksgiving break in 1997, she walked to her aunt's shoe store in Bayshore Mall. She left that afternoon for her shift at a nearby daycare, the Coastal Family Development Center. Her aunt offered her a ride, but it was only a mile away, and Mitchell chose to walk. It was 2:45 p.m., and she left down West Sonoma Street. She had never missed work at the daycare. However, she didn't show up for her shift later that day, and she was never seen again. Her savings account remained untouched, and a purchased plane ticket to Southern California went unused. In the following months, a multi-agency task force staffed the Karen Mitchell Information Center, taking calls. One caller reported seeing Mitchell at a nearby swimming hole. Rumors began to circulate that Mitchell's body had been found. However, none of the leads panned out. One witness, who was a former law enforcement officer, reported that Mitchell had entered a blue 4-door 76 to 78 sedan with California plates. The car pulled across the street, nearly hitting the witness before picking up Mitchell. She willingly entered the vehicle, which seems to suggest that she knew her abductor. The witness reported that the driver was a Caucasian male, 60 to 70 years old and slightly balding. He had eyeglasses and a crooked nose. He was a small man with a narrow build. The description and subsequent police sketch indicate a man who closely resembles Robert Durst, infamous from the 2015 docuseries The Jinx, which investigated him as a suspected serial killer. Credit card reports have placed Durst in Eureka on the day that Mitchell disappeared. Some reports indicate that Durst had visited the Bayshore Mall shoe store in drag several times. It's worth noting that in recent years, a former Eureka resident, Karen Van Swearingen, reported a similar encounter with a man in a blue sedan. She reported that it was, quote, the scariest experience I ever had in Eureka. The man had a raspy voice and, quote, weird-looking teeth. She reported that the man had the same voice and stature as Durst. If you have any additional information, please contact the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department. Christine Walders was a junior at the University of Wisconsin, studying botany and ethnobotany. In the summer between semesters, she vacationed to Eureka just inside Humboldt County. After a short time, she decided to stay in the area indefinitely. Her family maintained regular contact, and they frequently sent money to help fund her stay. She began to explore her spirituality, finding like-minded people who practiced shamanistic rituals. They participated in cleansing ceremonies, utilizing ayahuasca, a drug common among South American shaman rituals. It results in a 6 to 10 hour psychoactive DMT hallucination, much stronger than LSD. Walters also fell in with a former environmentalist group called Green Life Evolutions. It's worth noting that this organization was referred to by some as a quasi-cult. They had two headquarters, one in Eureka and one in Arcata. Around this time, Walters began to ask for increasing amounts of money from her family. On November 12th, Walters was found outside a rural home in Arcata. She was disoriented, naked, and covered in scratches, presumably from navigating the wilderness. She was raving, her words incomprehensible to the homeowner, and she seemed to be in some sort of a daze. Walters was escorted to St. Joseph's Hospital, where she reported that someone had followed her through the forest. However, she did not reveal any identities, and she never explained her nudity. She was tested for drugs and alcohol, but both came back negative. Further questioning from the sheriff's department uncovered no additional information about the events that had transpired. After she was discharged from the hospital, she told her mother that she had been chased by demons through the forest and that she had been through hell and back. She told her mother that whatever was pursuing her hadn't stopped, and they could find her at any moment. Her father had sent her $1,000 to pay for her return to Wisconsin and her family. The money would remain in her bank account. Somehow, Walters had lost all forms of identification, so her mother faxed important documents to a local copy center. On the afternoon of November 14th, Walters arrived at the copy center to retrieve said documents. She appeared disheveled, still wearing her pajamas. She asked for directions to the DMV, which was less than a mile away. She planned to use the received documents to obtain a new license. However, this was the last time Walters was seen. Her backpack, money, and lost identification were later discovered at the Green Life Evolution Center. The building owner told police that this wasn't uncommon, as Walters often left her belongings when she left for long hikes in the redwoods. There are no leads or additional information about her disappearance. A few potential theories have been proposed. Perhaps her cleansing ritual with ayahuasca could have led to a break with reality. With lingering hallucinations and psychosis, Walters would have been a danger to herself. It's clear that she was trying to regain her connection to reality seeking to reconnect and return to her family in Wisconsin. But she may have inevitably succumbed to her psychosis, getting lost in the wilderness outside Humboldt County. Or the remote location and local criminal elements provided the ideal setting for a circumstantial crime. Walter's mother described her as being overly trusting. Perhaps she had fallen in with the wrong crowd or stumbled over a dangerous stranger on her walk to the DMV. If you have any additional information, please contact the Humboldt Sheriff's Office. Sheila Franks vanished on February 2nd, 2014. She was 37 years old, living in Humboldt County when her marriage began to fall apart. She chose to stay in the area for her 2 young sons. When she met a sawmill worker, James Eugene Jones, the two began to date and eventually moved in together. However, it wasn't long until things soured with James. The two lived together, but Franks was ready to end the romantic part of their relationship. She was amenable to continuing to live together and remain friends. However, those close to her began to suspect that she may have been abused, covered in bruises and black eyes. She later confessed to her sister that Jones would physically assault her during altercations. Jones had a history of criminal arrests, including drug violations and a conviction for domestic violence. On February 2nd, Franks disappeared, and Jones would later tell police that she left their home at 8 a.m. to go for a walk and never returned. Later, her belongings, including her purse, credit cards, and documents of identification, were discovered in a storage unit. It's unlikely that she would have willingly left the area without access to funds, and even more unlikely that she would have left her 2 sons behind. Her remains would later be discovered in June 2019 on the Van Duzen River. DNA would later confirm the found femur to have belonged to Franks. Shockingly, the skeletal remains were found downstream from the remains of another woman who disappeared just 1 week after Franks. Danielle Bertolini moved from Maine to Humboldt County in 2010. Tragically, Bertolini had been 6 months pregnant with her son Xavier when she discovered that he would be born with severe developmental issues. She decided to terminate the pregnancy, but she couldn't be dilated, which led to a devastating surgical procedure. Struggling to overcome her loss, Bertolini chose to move to Humboldt County to be closer to relatives. She took a job working at a farm in Murder Mountain, and she fell in with the wrong crowd. Her grief quickly led her to begin using drugs. At the time of her disappearance, Bertolini was staying on the couch of a man who has not been publicly identified. She called him for a ride from Swains Flat area 30 minutes away, and she was never heard from again. Officials later confirmed that Bertolini was last seen entering the vehicle of a man who was connected to the disappearance of Sheila Franks. It was the sawmill worker, James Eugene Jones, who claimed to have dropped her at her home. Bertolini's skull was found on March 9, 2015, on the banks of the Eel River, roughly a year after she went missing. The Eel River and the Van Duzen River connect near US 101, closely linking the location of Franks and Bertolini's remains. Former Humboldt County detectives refused to discuss some or all these cases, haunted by dead ends and cold leads. Friends and family of the victims have suggested these cases were never worked to their fullest extent because most of the victims are considered the quote, less dead, unquote. Their lives were troubled and their difficult circumstances led to difficult choices. Many have gone on record to say they do not believe there is a connection between all five. As some drug operations begin to produce more dangerous drugs and operations expand to include a larger transient workforce, Humboldt County has only become more dangerous. Many of these women disappeared on or around Croptober, a period of time between October and early December when crops are harvested. During this time, owners and workers with a penchant for stimulants often turn their hobby into a habit to cope with long work hours. In a rural area where criminality is high and the community is paranoid, stimulants can lead to dramatic spikes in erratic and violent behavior. However, some believe the majority of these cases are connected. As mentioned, James Eugene Jones was the last person seen with Danielle Bertolini, and he was the last person to see Sheila Franks before she disappeared. Further investigation has revealed that Jones frequented a junkyard in the 90s where Karen Mitchell worked as a babysitter. It's conceivable that their paths may have crossed, and the original eyewitness report was mistaken. Jones has only been officially named a person of interest in the disappearances of Bertolini and Franks. In April, he was sentenced for multiple felonies and misdemeanors, including evading a police officer. Several other charges were dropped by the DA, but he will remain in North Kern State Prison until June 2023. We are drawn to these stories because there is still a lingering mystery. Looking for answers, we only find more questions. The stories of these five are tragic, but they are just one piece of the puzzle. The disappearances in Humboldt County extend far beyond the Humboldt Five.